All right, we are starting up the unscripted stream here, approaching 7 o'clock. Got this nice fire behind me to stay warm, and hopefully, I don't light on fire myself. But if so, it'll be fine. Everything's fine. I can just already imagine turning into that meme where this is fine, everything's fine, because the fire's just going. It's really feeling hot behind me. I can see it in the reflection, but I can feel it all over my body. Might be this idea might backfire, pun intended. Shout out to fire. Very cleansing. It can be. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so this is the unscripted talk about mental health. We meet at 7 o'clock every Sunday, and I have people in the chats ask different questions about mental health. We cannot guarantee anonymity or confidentiality, but I don't necessarily give everyone a shout out just so if they do want to be anonymous, we can keep it that way. So with that said, we have mental health discussions. Oh my gosh, it is really getting hot. I am here in Georgia with where my parents are, and they were nice enough to make this fire, and hopefully I don't burn up too much. Ask me the difficult questions, and yeah, I might have to lower the edge. There's my dad. Oh, there you go. See, there we go. Good idea. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for lending a hand. All right. So with that said, yeah, we're gonna have a conversation about mental health. I'll just discuss things until I see some questions in the chat, but hopefully we'll have questions in the chat soon, and we'll kind of have a chat about it. So I think I've pretty much talked about all the gist of mental health related. I should probably say this. So I mean we can browse on other topics, but we're not here for necessarily politics or religion. If they come up in the questions, that's fine. But we're focused on mental health and mental well-being. Good evening. Good to have a couple people shouting out in the chats. So it's Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody survived the Thanksgiving holidays with friends and or family without too much drama and or politics, and were able to reflect on things that they're grateful for. One of the things I talked about with the gratitude conversation, and I did a little bit even in one of my R&R mental health videos, but have been thinking about and having a lot of conversations with, is balancing having it be okay to have things going bad, that you are sad, you are struggling, and still to practice gratitude. And finding that balance between how do I honor the sadness as something that is important? How do I not stuff it, but give it its due attention? But also, how do I at the same time practice gratitude? And there was a family tradition that my dad used to have where we'd have every night two things that we shared that we were grateful for and one thing that we were struggling with. And I thought that was a good balance that allowed us to both reflect on and talk about the stuff that wasn't going well, but also practice that gratitude and practice that extra strength of the mental skill of looking at things that we can be grateful for. All right, with that, I got a question. I happened on a minister on Facebook by accident. He was saying that the GP whatever chat is like AI and is considered evil. Is that an appropriate form to ask this question? So is AI evil? Is kind of the essence of that question. So what AI is, and you could argue according to Jung, it's like tapping into the collective unconscious, because it is a large language generative model. That's what the chat GDP kind of stuff is. And what it does is it takes all of this different prose from around the internet and samples it and then kind of looks at the pattern and tries to predict it. If I was to, you can't diagnose anyone you haven't met in person, or I've done sessions with, and I haven't actually had ChatGDP as a client. But if ChatGDP was my client, I would say that it has a very, very heightened codependency. And this codependency, there's certain people that have the ability to kind of predict what someone, they're very people pleasing. They predict what someone wants to hear. ChatGDP has this in spades. So the answer is it evil? Well, if you want it to be evil, it'll be evil because it'll be whatever you want it to be. And because what it's trying to do is it's trying to predict what you want it to say. And it is pretty good at that. And so that's why it's a really dangerous therapist. So if you're going to ChatGDP for therapy, it's really going to be good at the validation. It's not going to be very good at the challenging things that you're struggling with. This is why ChatGDP, and they have tweaked the model a little bit, but actually led to people more likely to want to end their lives. So when they went to ChatGPT with their sadness and struggles with ideation, it kind of reinforced it, as in validating that ideation, which was very harmful. So they are tweaking that model constantly, but that's kind of an example of what ChatGPT does. I hope that answers your question. Is you stop for a second and dig the vibes, spam some of those reaction emojis on the side. It helps boost the stream for others to see. Okay, stop it. Dig the vibes, spam some of those reaction emojis on the side. I don't know what that means. I might be a little too old to understand that language. Tools are tools. Yeah. If they're used for evil, that is evil. Yep, absolutely. And if it's used for good, it's good. So perhaps complexity. So yes, and I do use ChatGDP. And so what you can do with ChatGDP is like ask for specific requests and then get ready to double check it. Because even that, it'll sometimes be off. For sources, ask it to cite itself. It can actually do that. So you can go right to the thing. It's like, I want to know. And so many times when you do that, you'll find out it says, well, I was kind of saying it's like this, but if you want the real data, here's what it actually is. So ask for the data is a really good tip, I think, in using ChatGPT if you're using that for a resource. What do you say to those that are great servants but feel guilty when not able to help someone? So yeah, I mean, this is something I've struggled with a lot in my life. I grew up in a culture that was very positive towards the idea of self-sacrificing. So we overly stressed, I would say, doing things for others, even at great consequence to ourselves. And while there's a place for that, it suddenly occurred to me, actually, when I was studying philosophy, I came up with the concept of egoism. And egoism is this argument that the best thing that you can do is do something for yourself. So egoism is, society would be at its best if everyone just did what they wanted to do all the time. Altruism was the rebuttal to that, to say, nope, society would be at its best if everyone did for others all of the time. And this is when I saw these two debates and I understood now altruism as a rebuttal to egoism. It started me to realize, wait a second, if my desires are sometimes good and sometimes bad, it stands to reason that other people's desires are sometimes good and sometimes bad. So it's a lateral move, me doing things for the sake of others alone and for the sake of myself. Like, it's not ethically better somehow, right? Now, I think there's a lot of reasons why we as a society used to really have a problem with pride. And we still have people that do. We have narcissistic people. We have people with antisocial personality disorders and different traits that make it more and more where they're focused on themselves. But because of different things in technology, we have more and more people that struggle with self-worth, that struggle with seeing other people as more valuable than themselves. And so when you've got somebody who is like really actively serving, but out of a sense of a low self-regard, they don't actually look at themselves very deeply. They don't actually see themselves. They don't feel comfortable in their own skin. They're going to be very prone to having guilt whenever they can't help. When instead you see who you are, your role, you're at peace with that, you're at peace with your limitations, you're at peace with then your boundaries, it becomes a lot easier to not take on other people's burdens and have that over sense of responsibility. I actually mentioned before I'm going to actually switch to this question. Why do you think the younger generation is having such intense anxiety? It's a great question, and I do have thoughts on that. And The Anxious Generation is a decent book to get more on that topic. How can we help someone that is living with anxiety, anxious mindset without bringing the anxiousness upon ourselves? Great questions. All right. So there is a correlation between the rise of technological devices, anxiety, and ADHD that is undeniable. Now, when I say correlation, it doesn't necessarily mean causation, but our brains are not used to or built to have all of this information coming in all these different sources all of the time. And so this is going to cause a sense of anxiety. And our bodies are actually really well equipped at dealing with adrenaline from danger when that danger is intimate. Is that the right word? Imminent, as it's about to happen, right? That's what our bodies are used to. So a tiger's going to attack. Oh no, I'm anxious, right? Excited, adrenaline, and we pump it and we do it, and then there's a release. When it's something that is an ongoing thing and there's this sense of permanence to it, our bodies don't know how to process that anxiety. And so I think that's a huge part of why the other generation is the anxious. And also we're touching each other a lot less, like physically, but also just having social interactions. Like it's much more digital. Here we're doing this digital community right now. We're part of the problem. But that all can lead to increased anxiety. There's a thing called oxytocin, where if you touch someone and you hold each other for like 20 seconds, there's a release of oxytocin. So having that physical interaction can really help to reduce anxiety. But there's a lot of different environmental reasons why younger generations are becoming more and more anxious. So what can you do to help? A lot of it has to do with willingness. So the first thing is, hey, I love to help. I'm willing to help, but is that what you're looking for me? What can I do from you? Having people give you clear guidelines for how they want help with their anxiety will then help you understand, one, it's not your job to reduce their anxiety. It's theirs, right? You can have a supportive role, and it actually is empowering to them. So they're more likely to have success at reducing their anxiety when they're taking ownership as having part of that. So me asking permission makes it now, hey, look, I'm happy to be a help. It's your job to reduce your own anxiety, but I would help with any way you want. What would be helpful for you? And sometimes they don't know, and you can kind of give different ideas. But like, for instance, the holding thing can be a great reduction for anxiety when the person is open and willing to receive that hug. On the other hand, if you did not ask for consent and you just have somebody who's feeling really anxious and you randomly go up and hold them real tight, is their anxiety going to go up or down? It's probably going to go up. They're probably going to be like, why are you touching me? Stop holding me. And they might be like, wanting to, wrestle and get out of it. right? So that's why consent, it's an extreme example of why consent really matters. And asking somebody who, is struggling with that anxiety at that moment, what you could do to help reduce their anxiety. Some people you just can't help. I don't agree, but no one, it's like willingness is a necessary ingredient. Okay. There's always a way that people can improve their situation if they're willing, right? But that willingness has to come from them. Now, if there's no willingness from them, what do? Right? You're stuck living with someone that shows no willingness to improve. That is where inspiration is the best mode. It's not a guarantee, but focusing on you doing the right things and doing that in front of them, inviting them to, participate, but really just doing the stuff that's healthy yourself can make a huge difference. Addiction, for instance, as somebody that just can't help, I've seen a lot of people get sober. And so the question is, what are they willing to do to overcome that addiction? That's the biggest part in the process. Exposure therapy, as an example, slow progression and willingness are the two essential ingredients, and you can overcome any fear using that method of exposure therapy. The holidays are stressful in a lot of ways. Any advice on managing the holiday pressure? Yeah, don't forget to breathe is one. That's a very simple, easy one. And stopping regularly and asking yourself, what am I so rushed about? What are really, and it's called the Socratic method, but where I start to kind of investigate the rationality behind my stress and feeling of pressure. Because going back to the kind of pressure we're used to and built to deal with when it comes to anxiety, which is imminent danger, that we are responding like it's that for things that are not that. And that's part of the problem with what happens in our brain. So our brain is thinking imminent danger, imminent danger, imminent danger, and it's getting anxious and its heart is beating faster and it's having an adrenaline dump when we're thinking about what we're going to buy the kids at Christmas time and wondering if we're going to have enough money at Christmas time. Well, guess what? It's not Christmas time. It's November 30th, right? We just had Thanksgiving. There's plenty of time in between those things. And I need to ask myself, why am I feeling so stressed? Why am I feeling like this is an immediate thing? Am I safe? Yes. Are my kids safe? Yes. Okay. Because if not, then it's like, okay, then we need to do something. And like, yeah, it's time for adrenaline. It's time to get anxious. It's time to start going on something. But if the danger is not immediate, then hold on, let's take a break. Let's process. Let's see if I can tap into slow thinking. And there's a lot of ways to tap into slow thinking. One of them is you have to slow it down to put it into words on paper. So you can literally just start journaling how you're feeling, and that'll immediately have your fast twitch, thinking start to go into slow, and that can cause you to calm down a little bit. There's other approaches like distraction, going to do something else for a second, breathing exercises. We talked last week about dancing as being a powerful tool to just kind of give yourself a break and start getting in sync with your body again. It's because I'm sick of their sitting in my house. Get out. It's time for release solo. I'm not sure what we're referring to. Tools they are used for evil and are used for evil. I don't see, Anna, where you're get out. It's time. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you can ask another question so I can get the context of what you're saying. But yeah, more comments not showing up from somebody. I tried to fix that. So if your comments aren't showing up, send me a message if you have my number. About the holiday and family and time being exhausted. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that when it comes to boundaries and knowing how, and obviously every situation is different, and sometimes we don't have control over the environment. But when you're at a point where you're getting so stressed that you're starting, the term is dysregulated. It basically means, though, that you're having a hard time being the highest version of yourself. So if you're starting to feel that way, the first question to say is, what can I do to immediately reduce the anxiety that I'm in? And, I wish people would practice this more often, because sometimes, even like, I'm not saying it's going to fix the situation, because sometimes we're in an environment that's super stressful and there's a lot of emotions, and even giving ourselves a little break is not going to reduce it enough to make a huge impact. But giving yourself 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes of a visualization exercise, can be such a powerful tool that can completely rewire the way you're looking at a situation. So what does this look like? Practically saying, I'd like to go to the bathroom. Nobody's going to have to ask questions. I don't have to tell them, like, hey, it's fine if you do. There should be no stigma about this. It should be something that more and more emotionally mature people do. But to say, hey, I'm going to go regulate in the bathroom for a little while, is culturally still not something normal. So you can just say, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and you can go into the bathroom and do a visualization exercise. And the one that I like to do, I picture the woods. I picture it in the fall. So this is a good time of year to think about, where the trees are swaying in the breeze and the leaves are falling. And if you see the leaves and how they drift like this, they drift nice and slow. And then I think about the water, and I think about the way it feels on my feet. And I just find myself relaxing in that state there. I think about how it smells. So I go through kind of all the five senses. I don't really think about the taste, honestly, but try to get super grounded in that visualization and just find myself back at rest and at peace within. And then I can enter back into the environment. Because, I mean, believe it or not, I am an introvert, and I can function in highly energetic environments, but it really drains in me. And there's still that feeling, even though I've done so many different things at high, energy events with lots of people, and I've functioned very well in those environments, I still have a rise of anxiety. And so when we're in that, like, first of all, it's normal. Don't freak out about the fact that you're having anxiety. Give yourself grace, understand your limitations, and understand your boundaries. I know I can function in that, but I know it's going to come at a cost. And so one of the questions that I ask for myself is this a necessary cost? Is this a cost worth paying, right? Is this energy that it's going to take for me to do this something that I want to spend? Or can I avoid this or make it easier for myself, right? If I put myself in the middle of the party and I just, living it up and doing all that, it's going to come at a much higher cost of energy, and then I'm going to have to fill that up later. And each person is a little different on the way this works. I mean, some people are actually have extroverted enough that they have more energy the more they're around people. And those people are going to feel exactly the opposite. And so understanding your limitations, setting yourself up for success. So let's talk about the holidays. So, like, as an example, before you have a conversation, you might be able to not demand necessarily the ground rules, but to kind of negotiate the ground rules of, like, look, I want to have a healthy conversation about this topic, and I want to be respectful to your part. This is where I'm thinking the boundaries can be. Is that okay with you? What do you think? And then this is before it ever got toxic or dramatic. Like, I just want to have a healthy Thanksgiving dinner. I don't want to talk about drama. I don't want to talk about politics. Is that something that we can do? Does that sound good to you? And if they say yes, you are, I would say, 70% more likely, which is not an actual statistic from research, just to be clear. But, it's way easier. And then when things get political, it's a lot easier. Oh, I'm realizing that we're getting political here. I'm wondering if we could just change the topic. More likely if they've already agreed not to. Does that make sense? This has been so helpful for me. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad these conversations are helpful. Yep. And feel free to keep coming with those questions and explaining what's going on with you guys. Obviously, I know it's a public forum, so some people get a little bit more shy and don't really want to go into things. Writing things down has helped a lot with emotional clarity. Yeah, I've noticed that there are clients that have grown up in households where they didn't have a free expression. It wasn't encouraged to talk about your feelings. And there's, of course, the phrase that you might hear parents saying with their kids, which is use your words, right? So the kid's crying and the parents are encouraging the kid to express themselves verbally. If you grew up in an environment where that wasn't done or was actually even discouraged, you can get to the point where you don't even know how you feel. You can't put it into words when it comes to your thoughts or your feelings. And starting to journal can really help in that process. And if you are really early in that process, don't try to make the journal make sense. I don't care if it looks like some crazy person was scribbling on walls. Just start writing whatever makes sense to you. And what'll happen is your brain wants to express itself. So you're giving it a format that it can learn how to do that. And eventually it will start making more and more sense. And this happens. So a lot of therapy is in some ways reparenting. If you were a kid and you started being upset, the baby, right? They're upset all the time, and they express their way they're upset in one form, crying, and it's just and then eventually, it's like very fundamental words, hit me, he hit me, right? Something like that, right? And then more and more we could express ourselves more and more articulate, and then we can really go, this is the thing that really hurt me. And the most emotionally in tune people can go, this is the wound that you just tapped into. This is, and depending on the person they're talking to, like if it's a spouse, a loved one, hopefully, and not a toxic environment, expressing that emotional root, watch as it changes the arguments entirely. So I had a couple that were fighting and they're debating back and forth about this surface level thing. And the feeling that there was a woman in this with a man, and the woman was expressing, the man was responding, same with the shallow, and she was expressing kind of with the shallow. And then I said, look, can we get to the emotional root underneath of what you're really hurt about, to the woman, because she was the one who was angry. And she went a little deeper, and he still was on the surface. But I knew that wasn't still the emotional root. And it went a little deeper, still on the surface, still in a debate. And I said, we can do a little better. Can you really, what is underneath that? What is the fear? And then she expressed the fear of what was really going on. And immediately he changed his tune. Immediately he's like, wait, that's what you feel? Oh, no, I don't feel that at all. Because it was about this, feeling like he looks at her as less than. And he was able to say, I think of you, I admire all these things about you. I admire all, this has nothing to do with that in that surface level for him, but it did for her. So if we can get down to that root, right, of clarity, that's the best. This process, if you've been in a family that didn't talk about those kind of things, or if you did, it was used against you, journaling is the route to it, because it's safe, right? As long as you do it somewhere, you can keep it private. Did we talk about dissociation and derealization? So no, we have not talked about that, but disassociation, honestly, even dissociative identity disorder, right, is the process taken to an extreme of us protecting our own ego. We will numb in grief. We will disassociate in anxiety. We have all these kind of methods to try to protect ourselves. And those are all signs that we've gone way too far. And trying to get ourselves in a more safe environment helps us to unpack that and to start to regulate. I can talk more specifically if you ask more specific questions. Okay, so for your mom, actually, we are talking about anxiety relief. For my autistic students, I have created a safe corner, pillows, blankets in the class, but away from the class, a safe corner. Yeah, that's honestly, that's great for people that have autism. That's great for people that don't have autism. Having an ability to retreat, I wish we gave ourselves more and more permission to do so. I mean, honestly, I do it. So, like, if I'm at a party that I'm hosting, I will disappear randomly in the party. And the people that know me really well will say, "Oh, where's Richard?" And they'll go, "Oh, someone will be like, oh, he's probably cuddling with his cat." Because an hour or two into the party, I'm needing to regulate. So, it's true. Yeah. And so I'm just like, 5 minutes of me cuddling with Ripley, and I feel ready to go back into the party and engage again. Ripley is my safe corner, and helps me to regulate. I want to provide them a place to de-stress if they need it. Is that a good idea? Yes, it's a great idea. So and also having I don't want to say the word rules because we have a negative stigma of rules, right? Rules as in like you're commanded, you have to do this. But like you could say a script, you could say a system of play, right? But if you develop that in couples, that's really powerful. So what does that look like? My go-to example that I use is the argument couch. So there's a couple that they only argued on this one specific couch. And if they didn't have that couch available and they were starting to argue outside of that couch, which by the way, these were mutually agreed upon rules. So both of the people in the couple agreed to this. Otherwise, it won't work. But they said, let's couch this conversation. And they immediately knew that meant dropping the topic and moving on to something else to then later address it. I'm pointing here because there's a couch here. Then later address it in the couch. This provides a couple things. One, you're establishing that your relation is not dependent on agreement, so that even if you're arguing, you're still going to connect. You still love each other, right? You haven't lost the safety of the relationship just because there's an argument that you're disagreeing about right now. So that's one of the benefits of the couch technique. The other one is that as long as you faithfully practice that couch, right? Have a place where when you're talking about things, it's in private and you're giving your full attention because there's a lot of arguments that happen because you're half listening, half paying attention, you're kind of in your phone doing different stuff. And then there's miscommunication and things get heightened. So many disagreements happen when people are like busy trying to do something and they're trying to, handle something and they feel like they have to do it immediately. What's weird as a society, this is a little bit of my own soapbox here. We seem to be in a rush to go nowhere in particular, right? Like we seem to be, I get it. Sometimes there are appointments that we could potentially be late for and we have to get there on time. But I feel like people act in a rush all the time, even when there's nothing that they're rushing to. And that's neurologically, long term, very damaging. To constantly be in the state of angst, to constantly be in the state of, I've got to get to the next thing, I got to do the next thing, and I'm trying to rush and be a hurry for everything. That's reason why they say stop and smell the roses. Having regular breaks where we kind of slow ourselves down is huge. But that also is why we argue a lot at the times because we think we communicated really clearly, but we were trying to do too many things at the same time. They think they heard us really clearly, but they were trying to do too many things at the same time. Nobody heard, nobody listened. To the couch, they can have that full attention, and then they can have also they're in close proximity, which if you're in love with the person tends to make the conversation go a little bit better when you're really close physically, when you're giving space. There's even I'll notice in couples therapy, I can tell by how distant they are from themselves and the couch how they feel. All right, if there's one person here and one person there, they're both really upset and they start to slowly move together, right? We're making intimacy improvements. We're making waves. This is going good, right? If one of them is moving and the other one's like this, okay, we've got resentment here. Watching the body language is huge as a therapist, I got to say. I even had one couples counseling session where the man was complimenting his wife, and the wife's body posture was getting like this more and more. And so I stopped and I asked, what was she hearing? And what she was hearing was criticisms, because he was talking about ways that she has improved. And she was so focusing on the issues that she's had, right? And the part of, like, even though it was this before stuff that he was hearing that she's gotten so much better at, she was focused on that. And she's like, I have so many issues. I'm junk, I'm trash, right? Low self-regard, came to from a filter in her childhood where she was talked down to a lot, criticized a lot. And so her ears were heightened towards anything that could remotely look like criticism. And if he hadn't known, he would have thought, she's hearing these compliments. She must be thinking, man, my husband sure loves me. And not even, I mean, honestly, that's what was happening. He didn't notice her body posture. So he would have thought, I sure did a good job loving my wife today. And she would have been, I'm sure, scum of the earth, and my husband doesn't even love me and sees me as trash. And both of them think that they're on the same page on that, and are in completely different worlds, which is also a good reason to ask for clarification, to say, like, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm communicating well. What did you hear when I said that? How does that make you feel? Like, what's going on with you? And I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. Clarification questions should be more and more the norm in relationships. But if you're watching the body posture and you're watching, is she moving in, is she moving out, or is he moving in, is he moving out, that can be great, easier to do when you've established a zone, like the argument couch. I don't know how I got so far onto the argument couch. Oh, the safe corner and having a space. So you've established a way of handling certain things. Families can do this in so many different ways, of like, this is how we handle conflict. The one thing I will say is they work way better if we can create buy-in. So we give people a sense of agency. So if you give people choices, say, hey, we could either handle it this way, or we could handle it that way. What works best for you? As you start to arrange the different ways of interacting and building that rapport. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. All right, we got, unless my chat is not updating, I haven't got a lot more questions yet from the chat. So keep those questions coming. We got people watching, but not asking a lot of questions. All right, here we go. What are common issues you see that stem from a lack of empathy and solutions? Here's the thing that I'll say about empathy. We are way worse at empathy than we think we are. So the first thing that people talk about when they talk about empathy and they've never heard of it before, or they don't really understand the concept, might be something along the lines of, like, you're putting yourself in other people's shoes. Well, if I put myself in someone else's shoes, I would still be me. I'd just be wearing uncomfortable shoes. It doesn't magically transform me into being them, having their same history, having their same family background, having their same story, their same way of looking at the world. And so you said, someone, Gia said, I think I have around zero empathy, but some guy told me otherwise. Yeah, you don't have zero empathy, trust me. There is a theory that there's a sociopathic spectrum, kind of like there's an autism spectrum. This is in the book Sociopathy or Sociopath, which is written by a sociopath, that there's zero empathy on the one end of the scale, and then there's like smaller degrees and smaller degrees until there's more and more empathy. And this would be the strict, profound sociopath, you could use the term, and then have slight sociopathy or whatever, but knowing you are not a sociopath. You do not have zero empathy. But going back to the limits of empathy, even if you're super empathic and you're way on this, like, I'm an empath, remember, if you pick up the feeling of other emotions, you still put it into your brain, your framework, your filter, your story. So assuming that people are thinking the way that you're thinking by saying, well, if I was acting that way, or if I said that this is what I would be thinking. That's called mind reading. It's a cognitive distortion and it's not helpful. Okay. So if we truly want to be empathic, if we want to be there to show empathy for people, a willingness to listen, to be present, and to have curiosity is the greatest tool of empathy that we could have. So it's really good to actually jump not jump to the conclusion that you know how they feel, not jump to the conclusion that you understand what they're going through, but show yourself as someone who has the desire to listen, desire to understand what they're going through is actually the most empathic response. And so if you were, say, let's say here, right, you were somebody on the spectrum here, this is like, it's hard because it's backwards, but sociopath here, right, and you had just a little bit of empathy and you're not all the way here, you might be, if you were deciding to listen, deciding to try to be there for someone, you might be better at it than somebody who has a lot of empathy because they assumed that they knew exactly how the person felt. And so thinking you have zero empathy, which you don't, might not be the worst posture to take as you're starting to try to get to the root of what that person is going through and what they're struggling with. Yeah, you're very empathic with certain things. That's true. With certain things. Are you empathic with everything? No. But you are empathic with certain things. What if you have too much empathy, carrying others' sorrows, especially those closest? Yeah, so if you're going to be a caretaker, then where is that care going to hold itself? So let's just think about this as if it's an item. So one of the things we learned in cognitive behavioral therapy is that your cognitions work a lot like the objects in real life, right? It might not be traditional physics, right? It's metaphysics, but it is your mental physics. Okay. So if I'm taking care, and then I'm wondering, why do I feel so burdened? Why do I feel so heavy? Why does my body feel so tired? It's like, well, you've been taking care and you haven't been giving it away. You haven't been carefree. And so what I would say is the more you take on care, the more you have to give care away too, right? And this can look like practicing self-care. It can also look like different tools to visualize giving up that care. So when I find myself, I mean, I'm a therapist. I meet with clients and they talk about all their struggles. Now at this point, I've built those muscles that are good at being present, but not weighed down by the burden of it. I also realize that it's their actual work that improves their lives. So I don't get to take credit for it, but I don't have to take responsibility for it either. That was game changing for me. But then I also practice releasing it. I practice mentally releasing control. And so you can actually visualize it into a burden. You can think of it as this object that I'm putting on and then putting it off. Or you can just practice, okay, what are the things that make me feel more relaxed and more carefree? Taking a walk in the woods, playing some instrument for a little while, you know, kicking a dog, right? That's fine. As long as you're not kicking a cat, it's really no harm done, no foul. Because dogs are built to be kicked. I'm just kidding. That's displacement, and don't kick dogs. Dogs are cute too. Okay. Where are we at? I agree. We can only know what we know. We do not understand really what others are going through. Example, losing a child. Even if you have lost a child too, you still only have your experience. You haven't lost that child, right? You've lost your child. You don't know what losing that child is like. Very true. So I'll give you a great example of it. I was in a support group with these two women who both experienced a very similar catastrophic loss in their life. One of them, they both went back to work at the same week. One of them had someone mention the deceased at their job to them in a condolence kind of way, right? The other did not. And both were horribly offended and couldn't believe that what happened to them happened to them. Okay, so I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but basically, the one woman was thinking it was so unprofessional for them to mention the deceased and mentioned it in the workplace. They were trying so hard to focus on the job, to just get their job in and to survive that day. And it put them in a whole spiral where it made them so upset. The other person couldn't believe that nobody mentioned it and was so horribly offended, felt completely unseen, completely unheard, uncared for, and she ran into a spiral of depression because nobody was there to wish their condolences. Now you could hear that and go, no matter what you do, you're in trouble. But that's where questions are the key. If you ask people what they're going through, if you ask people, depending on your relationship with them, which even that I give permission. So like I had a good friend. He was a pretty good friend. Like we knew each other for years. And when I knew he was going through his depression, I left a message where I said, look, when I was going through my divorce, it was something, there were some people that asked me, they said, look, I'm giving you a button to push. If you need someone to talk to, I'm happy to be there for you. No judgment, just help you through this process, even if it's just an ear to cry on, but also don't feel any pressure where you have to call me back. If you don't want to call me, if you don't need me, that's fine. Either way, I just want you to know I love you. That was the most loving thing. That was the most helpful thing for me that anyone could give. They gave me choice in it. That is so powerful. Okay. Is there too much empathy or does it become codependent? Yeah. So obviously, if you don't know where your emotions stop and that other person's emotions, if you start to take on their emotions as your emotions, that is absolutely codependent. So having that kind of over-attached bond to their emotion, if there actually was cynicism or not cynicism, when the two things form into one thing, I don't remember what that term is called, but like your emotions and their emotions start to more meld into one emotion in your mind, it's probably not their actual emotions, it's your own projection of it. But yeah, you're struggling with codependency, and that's time where it's like symbiotic. Yeah, that works. Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship. It's time to start looking at, so for true intimacy to exist, I have to into me see. Okay, it's dumb wordplay, but it really is genuine. I have to be a separate individual that understands who I am to truly connect with another person. So the cliche saying is, if you can't love yourself, how the heck are you going to love somebody else, right? Can I get an amen up in here? That's RuPaul. But the great Reverend RuPaul. But in the actual reality of that, the truth is, I would say, to me, more psychologically, that I can't love someone else if I can't love myself, because I can't even see who they are if I don't know who I am. And if you're connecting with somebody out of a sense of codependency, then they're not actually connecting with the genuine person, which makes it way less helpful. Because to connect with a genuine person, you have to be able to be authentic, which means you're not people pleasing, which means you're not being codependent. You are being who you genuinely are, and those connections become way healthier and way more powerful. That's true intimacy. So if I don't understand who I am, I can't stand on myself. I'm not being myself. I'm not actually connecting with another person. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that right. I was told to ask how to be there for someone when they're going through a tough situation that is their own doing. I was told to ask how to be there for someone when they are going through a tough situation that is their own doing. Yeah, I mean, so while there are definitely terrible traumas that happen to people that are nothing of their own doing, that are completely not their fault, most of our suffering, there's at least an aspect in which we've contributed to it. So I don't know, obviously, if they're ongoingly doing something that's creating their own harm to themselves, there comes a point where I really hope they will give me the ability to speak to that. I'm going to ask for that permission. But if they keep doing that, the way that I could help them might be just continuing to build them up and love on them, and trust the process. Because if somebody is doing harm to themselves over and over, there's probably a lot of wounds, there's probably a low self regard, and they're probably deeply entangled. So, me just helping giving them momentum by encouraging them, empowering them, telling them that they're capable might be enough. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but what grounding or calming strategies do you recommend for daily routines? One is, I'm a big fan of sandwiching it with an already established habit to make sure that you do it. This could be a little tied string on a toothbrush that just reminds you to take a moment to do a grounding exercise. Grounding exercises, my favorite are visualizations, but I will admit that there are some people that have a really hard time visualizing. Now, most people with practice can get better at it and can learn that skill. But if you're not wanting to do it, there's no in therapy, there's no forced march. There's so many different methods for grounding, including literally just breathing in different rhythms, that can be helpful. But also the 5 different senses are a very common grounding exercise, listing 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you smell, and 1 thing that you taste. Just helping you get a little grounded. And Ripley coming out for a second, but she didn't come on video. So that's a grounding one. Mine is the visualizing that I talked about earlier with the place of peace in the forest. And that's, I can do that at this point in 30 seconds and have it make me a lot calmer and look more well rested, which Carol is saying, I look well rested and it's good seeing my fear is working. It's good seeing my fear is working double time. You look very well rested. It's good seeing my fear is working double time. I'm not sure what you mean. My fear is working double time. But I do feel well rested. I'm up here in Georgia with the family. And it's always a pleasure to be with my parents. My mom is one of those women that is, really bad for future romantic partners because she wants to feed me all the time. And so I get spoiled when I'm here because she just always, can I cook food for you? Oh yeah. So, oh, I guess so. Oh, if you insist, I'll let you make me some more popcorn tonight. Hint, hint. And after all, I'm the youngest child in my family, so I get to be babied every once in a while. She's actually in the room right now, but anyway, so that definitely makes me feel well rested and is a rare thing. So, all right, any more questions or things that you want to mention in mental health before we log off today for after our unscripted mental health conversation? I wish I could see Mom's face right now. She's kind of smiling and rolling her eyes, but delightful and beautiful as always. Yeah, she's the best. You who saw my first episode for the other thing. Oh, Dad's going to join now too. I didn't say you could join. I asked her to join. Now you can hear it. You can log off. So yeah, this is my dad. Yeah, I looked up to him until I was about 7, and then I still metaphorically looked up to him, but physically it was, a little. No, I'm just kidding. I'm very happy to have these parents. Oh, look, and now there's Ripley's coming to join the chat too. So we got the whole family here. Yeah. So then they've been great grandparent cats. I don't know how you'd say that, but
well, she's a grand cat.
She's the grand cat, and they've been great grandparents to my cat. So that's nice too. But anyway, all right. So anybody have? Oh, she's gonna go. Boop. Launch the Ripley. Okay. So any other questions before we close up today? Looks like no. So hope you guys enjoyed and got a lot out of this unscripted chat. Yeah. And you got a little glimpse on the delightful, cinematic, beautiful family. I'm very blessed. Not a lot of people have such amazing parents. I'll talk about all the dysfunction they cause me when they're not on the chat. Just kidding. Yeah. All right. You guys have a great night. Hopefully I'll see you next Sunday.